Here we are on the beach.
Wonder why we're the only ones? It's because it's cold.
Yeah, it feels like it's 9 degrees, right? 60s.
No, it's not 60.
No?
It's 54.
Welcome back to the channel. Some of these musicians, they are prodigy. They don't feel like they are, but they are. And you'll say, oh, they just practiced. Let's see how they think about their instruments. How does John Lennon think about songwriting? How does Bruce Lee think about martial arts? Let's see interviews with some of the greatest guitar players alive, and maybe we can get a hint.
It's strange for me to do clinics because I'm completely self-taught, but But I've taught a lot of other people how to play guitar over the years. So I guess what I try to do is teach people how to be self-taught.
Okay, that's bizarre. That's good.
My father showed me about 5 chords when I was very young, when I was 3, and then he said, "That's it. That's all I know." But there's my record collection.
Okay.
So I used to slow down lots of Hendrix and Clapton and Beatles, and I mean later on I started reading books. I would go to the library and find books about music theory, but it always started with the sound.
Yeah.
And then I would find the words to describe the sounds. I don't know if I said I want to play guitar, or if my dad said I think it would be funny to take a photo of our small child trying to play guitar. It could have happened anyway. Everyone in my family grew up appreciating that music is a serious thing and that you should listen to it. It's not just wallpaper. It should go on quietly in the background whilst you lead your life. You can sit there and appreciate music as a work of art. So we all grew up thinking that. And I guess any kid in that situation would put 2 and 2 together and say, okay, music is a serious thing and I feel good when I listen to music. There's a tool over there that you can use to make music. I want to make music.
Yeah. So that, I mean, as every child, that was your dream to make a living out of music, or it simply happened?
No, it was more like why does anyone choose to learn a language? Like in your case, perhaps, why did you decide to learn Italian? You didn't.
Yeah.
All you know is now you speak Italian and it's really helpful and it's part of the way you think. And music for me was like that. It's just, I grew up surrounded by music and I learned the language of music the same way I learned the language of English. It was never a conscious decision, really.
Very natural thing.
And in terms of trying to make a living out of it, I don't know. I'm still trying to work out how to make a living out of it.
How long do you practice every day?
I don't really.
You don't?
No.
That's amazing. I mean, you're very good.
Well, I try. I've played a lot over the years, but I think there's maybe a difference between playing and practicing. And to me, practice is an ugly word.
All right.
Practice means locking yourself in a room and doing an exercise over and over again.
Yes.
And I never had the attention span for that. All I ever wanted to do was play the sounds that I heard in my head or copy the sounds I heard on a record and try and make everything sound good. So for me, it's always been fun. I've never needed that discipline element because I've always just wanted to play.
And that's because you're self-taught, maybe, because of that? I mean, it's something that is just a feeling. You let it go and you play.
Possibly. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that needs improvement in what I do is stuff I can improve without touching a guitar. My fingers pretty much know where to go to make the sounds that I would need to make.
Yeah.
It's all about the music up here. If I'm trying to copy the sounds that I hear in my head, then the way to get better is to make the music in my head more interesting. So a lot of that happens just by thinking about music, which I can do when I'm sitting on a train, or trying to feed myself new music. I'm always looking for new things to listen to, new things to inspire me. And that's as close to practice as I get. It's all up there.
Yeah.
Well, I try to be a musician rather than a guitarist. I don't care about guitar just for the sake of guitar. Guitar is a typewriter. It's not the book that you're writing, it's just the typewriter. But I guess everything I've ever heard has been an influence. Even the stuff I don't like has influenced me by showing me exactly what I don't want to sound like. But then I guess a few really important things would be all the 50s rock and roll stuff when I was very young. It was pre-army Elvis, I thought was great. Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, all that good stuff. The Beatles really got me into interesting chord progressions and harmonies at an early age. I guess Eric Clapton, when he was in Cream, that era, that's how I learned that a guitar could be like the singer in a band, and the guitar could play the melody, and it could be the voice. Hendrix obviously reinvented the whole instrument in every way imaginable. But the thing I learned about him, well, the thing I learned the most from Hendrix was probably the way he didn't have rhythm guitar playing and then lead guitar playing as two separate entities. He was just playing guitar, and he would play melodic lines in his rhythm playing, and he would play rhythmic stuff in his solo playing. And I remember just listening to that stuff and thinking, this guy is just playing whatever he wants to play. He's completely free. That's cool. In terms of the technical stuff, I guess Yngwie Malmsteen, massive influence. Not just because of the speed of it, but when Yngwie plays loads of notes, it sounds like he means them. He plays with passion, he plays with sincerity, and a lot of the clones that came out missed that part. They just copied the technique and missed the spirit behind it. But Yngwie, whatever other people might say about Yngwie, he's a real guitar player, you know.
In 1993, you've been elected Guitarist of the Year. What that meant to you, and that changed in a sense your career? You had a different exposition for that, or?
Honestly, not really. I should add, I don't really think of music as a competition.
All right.
People would come up to me after that and say, "Oh, so you're the best guitarist in the UK?" It's like, well, I don't think so. You know, Alan Holdsworth didn't enter the competition. Gary Moore didn't enter the competition. It's just of the bored kids who could be bothered to enter the competition, I was the one who got lucky. It doesn't mean anything. Really, I won just because I thought I might make some connections with the UK guitar magazines who might be able to get me some work or something like that. I thought it might be nice to win an amp because I was a very poor child. And it worked. I got a very nice amp out of winning that competition, but then nothing happened. And I went back to working at McDonald's, and so is that it? So about a year later, I wrote to the magazines who had sponsored the competition and said, remember when you said I was good at playing guitar? Well, have you got any work for someone who's good at playing guitar? And I started a career of transcribing guitar solos and things for the magazines.
How would you define yourself? I mean, more jazz, fusion, blues, or rock guitarist, or a bit of all of them?
Yeah, it's just music.
Music, okay.
I hate pigeonholing things. The only good reason to have to put music into a category is because it can help you to sell it. It helps people to waste less of their time when they're looking for music that they think they might like. Yeah. So I like the word fusion.
All right.
Because all that means is take all the different stuff you like, put it in a big bowl and cook it all together. Let's take jazz notes and play them with a rock instrument and then add loads of Indian influence, and what are we going to call it? Let's call it fusion. So the spirit of fusion is a good concept. I guess it's probably cleverer than normal rock, but it's louder than normal jazz, so somewhere in there.
In between.
So maybe it's the worst of both worlds, I don't know. But I think the important thing for me is whatever you're going to play it like you mean it.
Yeah.
Like when we were talking about Yngwie. And just because someone is very technically capable doesn't mean it should be enough just for them to play things that are difficult to play. Yeah. It's like, I don't care how long you practiced that for. Does it sound good? Does it move me? Does it sound like you mean that? Okay, it's a mix of everything. I've finally reached a point where I can fly halfway across the world, and when I get to my destination, like 9 time zones away, someone at the airport will recognise me, which has never been the case before. Now, is that because I started playing when I was 3, and I did my first gig when I was 5, and I was on national TV in the UK when I was 9, or because I won that competition in '93, or because I joined Asia? No, it's none of that. I've tried all these things for decades of my life. That's not why people recognise me. It's because of a few random clips of me jamming along with backing tracks on YouTube. I didn't even put them up there. I didn't tell anyone to watch them. Maybe they're good clips, maybe they're not, but there's an element of luck there.
Yeah.
Because there are lots of great clips of people playing guitar really well on YouTube. Some people get lucky, some people don't. Don't ask me how it works. But in terms of anyone who wants to follow the dream, or whatever, say, remember the following: music doesn't owe you anything. As soon as you start expecting music to kind of give you a pension or a handout every week, it's like, no, music's just music and it makes you happy, that's enough. It doesn't owe you a living.
Yeah.
Play music because you have to and you can't help it, and you can't imagine a life where you didn't play music.
Yeah.
And that way you can never be disappointed.
Yeah.
It is a complete answer. The one other thing I'll share with you, this is not my quote, I think it was Steve Swallow who played bass with Pat Metheny. He said, if you want to be a musician as a career, don't do it. If you have to be a musician, it's the best job in the world. Yeah, I think it's nice to remain a child as much as possible and to say, if something distracts me one day, it's, oh, that's interesting, I want to do that. I'll do it, you know, so long as it's something that excites me. Because I think I'll play better in situations that I find challenging and interesting. It's a nice goal to try and be part of something that doesn't already exist.
Yes.
Okay, which is what, like, 3 people who are really important in the development of the guitar.
Yes.
Les Paul. I hope everyone's familiar with just how incredible Les Paul was.
Yes.
He just invented all of the shit that we use now, and somehow managed to be a chart-topping pop musician at the same time. He was the Da Vinci of guitar, I think. Hendrix. I don't need to explain why Hendrix was important. I need one more. It's tempting to say someone like Chet Atkins, and all the rock guys would maybe question that, but hugely important.
And the 3 overrated?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, okay. All the others.
It doesn't matter. If you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything at all.
All right, good.
I don't know. I think we need a balanced musical diet. And sometimes we get kind of engrossed in a certain genre and maybe OD on that. And there's some kind of vitamin imbalance in our capacity to enjoy music. And we just know that we're craving something else that our normal listening fodder isn't providing us. So I think maybe you just become more receptive to a certain thing that particular genres of music might have to offer. And you kind of find yourself looking for that. Also travelling. I think travelling is really good for kind of opening your ear and exposing you to different things. Going to Turkey, for instance, helped me to discover a lot of details about Turkish music, which I would have spent the rest of my life not knowing had I not gone there. So sometimes it's good to experience music in its intended context. Persevere, you have to be prepared to try out different things and work hard and all that, but also you have to let that initial idea tell you where it wants to go. A lot of my kind of experience in the world of music doesn't really have words to go with it. You just kind of accumulate experience, and in some cases I think I cheapen an experience by trying to express it. How can I best serve the song? And things like that. You can't describe the instincts that you develop just by working more and more with different people and figuring out how to read what it is that they're trying to coax out of you. But hopefully it's just something that comes more naturally as you do more and more of it.
I don't know why, but I've always had the ability to play like weird, very difficult things. I'm not a shredder, but when it came to Frank's stuff, he would like sit at the piano and write this stuff, which is very un-guitaristic. But I would just sit and work on it until I was blue in the face, and I'd get it down, and it worked. So I had a place in the band. But he would constantly, my audition, I had to play him this one thing over the phone once, and oh my God, when I went down actually to play during the rehearsal, I thought, this is crazy. I'm 20 years old and auditioning for Frank Zappa. This is ridiculous. But I went down, and he told me to learn all these songs, and of course he pulled all these songs that I didn't know, And he was so, you should ask Vinny, because Vinny was there, how brutal he was on me. I couldn't even believe it. He made it so difficult. This one thing, and I know this isn't necessarily a Frank interview, but I'll tell you the story, it's great. this is during my audition. He says, and Frank would like play these things on the guitar, and he had a certain technique, but he wasn't like a shredder or anything like that, And he'd play something, he'd say, play that. And I go, okay, and I play it. And he goes, okay, now, play it in 7/8. I say, okay, and I play it in 7. He goes, okay, now play it reggae 7/8. I'm like, okay, and I do it, and he goes, okay, now add this note. Okay, and I do it. Playing reggae 7/8, and I'm adding these notes. He goes, okay, add this note. And it was impossible. It just was physically impossible, not just for me, but for anybody. I said, oh, I can't do that. And he goes, I hear Linda Ronstadt is looking for a guitar player. Yeah. That was a tough tour for me, man. Not because of the music, but because I was young. I was out on tour. It was all this stuff, all this staying up all night, and just. I was this kid. I grew up in my bedroom, was playing the guitar, and all of a sudden you're out there, and there's groupies and all that stuff, and up all night. By the time I got to Texas, I turned yellow. I did. It's completely dehydrated. I was just awful.
Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Welcome to GearFest 2019. We're here with Steve Vai. Great to have you here.
Nice to be here, Mitch.
Pleasure to
Good
see you
again.
Right.
Because still, there's in the back of your mind, there's these, well, what if this isn't accepted? What are people going to think about this? What if you fail? What if you can't afford it? Or whatever it is, But I don't think that those kinds of thoughts are very uncommon in people. Mm-hmm. But a creative urge can completely trump all that, and that's what would happen. I would just go, well, I have to do this right now.
Right.
An artist, and you're recording something, and you come across an idea that really gives you that aha moment. It's like, oh, and it's just like maybe it's just like a little riff, or it's a change, or it's the way the melody hits the chords, and that's what I look for. I have to feel that in my music, mm-hmm. in order to feel as though I've got something that's going to continue to stimulate me for, every time I listen to it. Because if that's not there, it's like wallpaper or something,
Right.
But now other people recognizing these little innocent treasures, I never had any expectations for that. I just thought they'd be my secret.
Right.
And that was fine.
Right.
And these are like nuances that you don't expect to talk about when you're talking about a project, but these are the things that light me up. This
right.
really when I think about it, sometimes you don't even know why or what you're doing, but it's been 40 years now, and I look back at it all, and I think, well, that's why, for those little moments of,
right.
Oh yeah, that's good, I've always had a kind of an affinity for the abstract,
mm-hmm.
So I kind of just noodle.
Right.
And I just let my ear take it wherever it's going to go. And yeah, there's certain tendencies I have,
mm-hmm. Everybody does.
Yeah. I don't usually just, I base everything, oddly enough, I base everything off of the blues scale, mm-hmm. but you'd never know it, because
right.
it's...
Doesn't sound like the box, right?
No, it's all over the place, But, yeah, I try not to think so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm not so much an experimental jazz type player. Like if you have a major chord that you hear, obviously there's a lot of notes that you can play with that aren't, as long as you stick with the notes, the 1, the 3, and the 5 for the most part. And you can do that with all sorts of chord structures. Mm-hmm. I don't do that on the fly as a player usually. I'm just, I don't. The guitar is not mapped out in my mind that way. Mm-hmm. I've resisted for many years and still to practice or to even go that deep into scales. In the early days, sure, I practiced scales, but the theory, in a sense, where, okay, I know what chord that is, so I know that I can play this scale, I don't do that because you lose your connection with the melody that's organically coming out of you. So what I try to do more, and which I encourage, and yes, it's great to know the theory and all, because then it can become second nature. But really, listening. Your ears are your greatest, your best friends when you're playing, and that's kind of a double-edged sword in a sense. That what do you mean by that? What do I mean by your ears are your best friends? Well, there's two ways to listen. And when I'm performing, I try to find that balance. One way is you're listening, you're just very present in the moment of the performance with, you're listening to the stage, you're listening to the other musicians, you're keyed into what they're doing, you're listening to the harmonic atmosphere, you're listening to the whole atmosphere, the atmospheric real estate of your entire awareness, so to speak. So you're just listening intensely,
Sure.
And when you do that, there's no room for thoughts that will derail you from your being connected. Because when you're listening, you're connected. Not listening sounds like this in the head. Oh my gosh, I wonder what they're playing. I went, ooh, he's better than me. I can't do that. Oh, but I can do this. And okay, what key is that? Oh my God, I don't know what key that is. Maybe this note? I don't know. Okay, geez, it's loud up here. Why is he louder than me? The drummer's off. This is all mental noise.
Right.
And only you know if it's happening. Most of the time, people don't know it's happening. They're unconscious of the fact that they're not present. If you were conscious of being present, then you wouldn't have any of those thoughts.
Sure.
Because if you're listening intensely, there's no room for that. And that's when you really can respond. The other listening is more of like a listening inside of your own. It's very hard to explain. It's kind of like you're just listening for a melody, for the melody to tell you what to play, and it's fun because you're present with it, and the notes just kind of fall into themselves, so to speak. You're just being in the moment with what you're doing, and you don't have to do anything. It kind of does it on its own. It's kind of a difficult thing to talk about, and that's what I work on. I'm no master. No.
Some would say.
Well, that's.
I would.
They don't know my secret. So, it's always a practice, though, no matter where you're at.
Sure.
But it's a good one. It's life in music. It's the life of music. It's where you belong. You belong in the presence, in your own presence, in a musical environment, listening and connected and flowing. That's when it's a good experience.
Sublimate that. How do you push that down so that you can get into that space?
Well, it's a recognition of your own ego, and because it can be a very difficult thing to do. Not recognizing it can be considered, and this is just terminology, being unconscious. So the mental noise that torments you is going on. It's conditioned. It's just conditioned thinking they're not even your thoughts. You've inherited them from humanity. They're the collective thinking patterns of humanity that you've inherited because that's just the way it is. It's just the way we were brought up and brainwashed and conditioned. So you start creating beliefs in your own mind about things, about the way you play, and about your presence with other people, and you believe that these thoughts are real, like what you think about the other guy or girl, whatever, are real, so in order to help create some clarity and to get more in touch with your note, and when I say your note, what I'm referring to is your unique creative voice, because everybody has one, everybody. Like I've said before, I've never heard anybody hit one note that ever sounded actually like Jimi Hendrix.
Sure.
But I would probably never hear anybody hit one note that sounded like the guy that was trying to play like Jimi Hendrix. You know, so everybody's actually on a very deeper level. You're completely unique. So that's a great advantage, you know. And when you recognize that uniqueness, then it can start flowing. And many people are doing it. You know, you're sort of you're unique by like just knee-jerk reaction. You know, you can't help it. But to actually dig deep into the beautiful creativity of your uniqueness, you have to create an opening for that.
Right.
You have to be. It almost sounds like you know you need courage or something, because sometimes your unique voice, it shouldn't fit in. You know, it should not be, and it isn't. What everybody else might be doing. So it can take a lot of courage to create that opening, and the way to do it is to first have the desire to do it.
Right.
Okay, you have to want to find your own unique creative potential. That's actually that has to be a burning desire.
Right.
And that's all you have to do, because the rest will just follow. It has to. You know. Now, when it starts following, what you might recognize, you start recognizing the obstacles to your uniquely creative talent. You know, because that's the only thing, and those obstacles are not in the outside world like most people think. They may say, well, I can't be uniquely creative if I don't have this gear, or I don't have that amount of money, or this person doesn't sign me to this, or if this is all nonsense. It's an illusion. It's your ability to block your own unique potential is it's you that's doing it. You're the only one that can do that, and the only thing that ever obscures that is the thoughts in your own head about it. And they're usually thoughts that have to do with insecurity and and fear. You know, and this is fine. There's nothing. You know what I mean?
It's natural, right?
You can't, if you consider yourself a bad person because you have all these weird thoughts about things, that's only going to make it worse. You just have to recognize that, you know, these thoughts are destructive to my creative health.
Right.
But you have to be able to recognize that and ask yourself, is what I'm thinking here actually productive? Does it make me feel good? Is it something that's valuable, a valuable contribution, a sharing experience? Or is it separative? Is it based in fear? Is it creating an obstacle between me and the others, you know? So you have to be ready to recognize these things.
Sure.
Because, you know, I've been touring for like 40 years, and a tour is like a piece of your life, you know, and if there's one asshole, you know what I mean? it can have the tendency to kind of make that whole experience kind of like a bummer.
Right.
You know, and I just, at this point in my life, or for the past 10 years, 15 years now, I don't really need that. You know, I really don't, you know, and it's much nicer to tour with guys that like to have a good time.
Right.
So first and foremost, I guess, they got to have a good sense of humor, fun, easy, and of course, they have to be talented in a particular area. They have to resonate with the music, eager, capable, you know, and willing to grow.
I've been playing for a couple of years, and I distinctly remember saying to myself, when is it going to happen? When am I going to get good on the guitar? When's it going to happen? And it never came, and it still hasn't. You know, because that's not the way it works. You don't arrive at a certain point as a musician and just go, yeah, goddamn, I'm where I want to be. Because you're always pushing to be better. But one thing that has happened while I've been practicing, while I've been working my bollocks off to be a better player, time just keeps going. And one thing that I realise is really important is that you've got to embrace time. You've got to allow time to happen. You know, learning the guitar or learning any instrument or devoting yourself to any kind of artistic craft is a lifelong commitment. A lifelong commitment. So, why are you in a rush? You don't need to be in a rush. Take your time. You've got time. You've got all the time in the world. You don't need to be really good now. And to be honest with you, you'll never get there if you're in a rush to be better. I remember when I was at music school, somebody said to me, because we constantly being given scores to learn, and you know, to be put in positions where you have to play certain gigs, and you know, really quickly. And it's like, I remember being given this score and I was just like, how the fuck am I going to learn this? I've got like days to learn this. And somebody I was on the course with just said, speed learn it. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, speed learn it? You know, what that means is you either learn it properly or you learn it badly. There's no such thing as speed learning. You know, it was funny, but I learned a lot out of that. And what I'm saying is, you know, to go back to embracing time, you know, you're in no rush, you know, so sit back and enjoy the process. Enjoy the process. You know, being able to pick up a guitar and play certain things, you know, is wonderful, you know, and maybe you can't play the things that you want to play right now, but you will in the future, and that is something to be really excited about. And that's something to give you a reason to get up in the morning, tomorrow morning. You know, you can wake up and go, you know, maybe I'll be able to do this. You know, and if you can't on that day, don't worry. You'll be able to do it soon. So embrace time, because time is a wonderful thing. Anyway.
Well, I guess I try not to think too much in styles. I of course, when you start to learn, it's kind of important that you learn it like jazz, rock, pop, or something like that. But these days, when I play my own music, I always try to play my own music, and I guess it's a mix of everything. I want to feel that the performer is really trying to say something or play. Like if there's a saxophone player, it's like, you know, and he's really trying to feel the music. And so obviously to put that in a word is expression. So when someone's really trying to express something meaningful, so I guess that's what I look for in music, or what I try to do myself. And sometimes it's hard, but you know, you have to try and keep focused and you know, express something new every time you play, guys. And then suddenly I heard Frank Gambale and my ears exploded, and I was like, wow, this is a great combination of really good rock sound but more sophisticated harmony. And then I set on my path to really learn how to play in that kind of fashion. You know, I didn't want to copy, although I spent a great deal of time learning Frank's technique or trying to learn it, and it's a wonderful technique that he's innovated, and I guess I've been heavily influenced by that. Of course, I tried to put my own thing on it as well, my own slant. However, I really respect the classical discipline, you know, the technique. Part of how I sit and how I have the guitar is so that I'm in a prime position for technique, you know, for good techniques. So I have a respect for classical, but I think it's more that I just take from the technique. You know? Because I thought that if I could hear that chord, I'd like to be able to do that if I want to. You know? So, you know, you could use a few approaches, like the bluesy approach, like I said. So again, depending on the sort of sound you're after, you can just your approach changes with the inspiration. You know?
Yeah.
Say like the bluesy sound, you know, like it's got a vocal quality, but then the sort of more jazzy is the more sweeter. And then you can tense it up a bit. It's more like I'm using this as a looper, which is a great practice tool. So if I was practicing my A minor, I would do something like. I guess I'm saying is that I would always try and make my practice feel interesting, like to spice it up. So using a looper or a metronome or both or a drum machine inspires you to play longer. And I guess, you know, when I was practicing a lot more, I mean, don't get me wrong, I hope I wish I had more time to practice, but I would definitely say that if you can make yourself inspired to practice as long as possible, then that's a really good thing. You know, make sure you try and have good technique. Don't play too fast. Play at a speed that's comfortable and gradually build up. Bring the drum machine up or the metronome tempo up, or your backing track. You can probably slow down or pitch up these days with programs. Think about how you want to sound, you know, how you want to, what do you want to sound like when you're out playing on stage, and you should be able to sound like that in your bedroom, so that you're practicing the way you want to sound. So I mean, because I think some people just practice really fast licks, you know, and you know, like for ages, and then it's like try and play something different on a gig. And then wonder why it doesn't really sort of come into their playing, and that's because it's quite separate. So I would say make sure you have time to play in your practice as well, so that you start to practice how you want to sound. You know, when you kind of learn your art when you're younger, you know, you obsess over it for hours and hours, and it kind of takes over your life. And it certainly did with me until I was maybe 26 or 7. I was just caning it every single day for 10, 12 hours, you know, when I could. And I think I've just tried to focus more on life, you know, enjoying life and getting inspiration, like more emotionally than physically on the instrument, listening to music that really touches my soul, if you like. And, you know, and just being really honest about music. So, yeah, that's sort of where I'm at really at the moment.
Plan your solo or your improvisation, how to make it, you know, like have a peak?
Yeah, I never plan it. I actually, that's something that I specifically don't do, because I like to really leave it up to spontaneity. So I really don't, you know, all the blues jam track stuff, or should I say jam track central stuff that I've done, I just you know, improvise on the spot, you know. So even, you know, like the Feeling Fine and Summer of Love were improvisations, the whole thing, even though there was some sort of melodic content. You know, I knew on those two that I was going to start in that position. I knew I was going to do that, and then that was it. The rest is improvised. And the same with I had that much. And then that was the starting point.
And that's become your trademark.
Well, maybe at the moment,
Or the key center.
Generally, I'd look at, I guess, I use my ear, because sometimes, you know, theoretically there's a key center, but it doesn't necessarily always sound like that. I think I let my ear tell me what is really going on. And obviously you can hear if there's really a strong key center, say like C minor, and it just sort of diverts for a while but then comes back. Whereas obviously some tunes will actually kind of shift key for a while, and then it doesn't feel like there's a key center, there's a few. So I try to hear that again as a bigger picture, but as I'm going, kind of pinpoint each chord to try and pick up the inflections of it. You know.
So it means you need to have a good ear to understand by your ear.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, music really originally, I guess, was you know, done by ear before music was actually notated and everything. So I suppose the most natural way is to feel through your ears.
So do you have
Is it true that in hotels you don't sleep in the bed, you sleep on the floor?
Yeah, back to that. Of course, yes, it is true, and it's kind of a curious preference. But I find that there's some I don't know. There's just some reassurance in having that solidity, and perhaps that's why Mrs. Gibbons.
Right, I was going to say your wife. How does she feel about that?
Well, she wrote "Missin' Your Kissin'." I think it's because I have to get up and snuggle up every once in a while just to.
Well, it's probably better for your back, I would think, right?
I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
Were Billy Gibbons and ZZ Top offered a lot of money to shave their beards?
To this day, we don't know what's lurking in these chin whiskers of ours.
Yeah.
And early on, we had taken a break off the road and disappeared. We were staying in touch by telephone, and when we got back together, these bristles that were starting to sprout had taken on a epic proportion. And
except for Frank, whose last name is Beard, who does not have a beard.
Yeah, go figure.
Right.
After 50 years, you know, it's like, okay, Frank Beard, the man with no beard. But yeah, we were offered. We had to deny it. We couldn't bring ourselves to doing it.
Okay, let's see. Is Billy Gibbons a vegan?
Well, I don't know. I was walking down Soho, and there was a rather interesting restaurant. Turns out to be a vegan restaurant, but that brought up a recent discovery here in Manhattan. There's a certain restaurant that is serving smoked watermelon.
Wow!
And I think it started as a challenge, but it certainly pleases the vegans out there. They don't have to consume meat, but they don't have to feel like they've been left out of the barbecue line.
Right. How many guitars does Billy Gibbons own at this moment in time?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Well, as the old saying goes, one's too many and 100 ain't enough.
Gotcha. What guitar does Billy Gibbons play the most?
One of the more recent ones that will be seen on this next outing with the Big Bad Blues, our fearless guitar builder in Boise, Idaho.
Wow. What's the name? Give him a plug.
It's called A Little Thunder.
A Little Thunder.
Yep.
What kind of sunglasses does Billy Gibbons wear?
The Ray-Ban Caballero.
Caballero.
Yes, sir.
And how many cars does Billy Gibbons own?
Oh, Lord. I guess the question is, running, still running.
Right. Well, yeah.
There's a garage full. We are waiting for the day when we got a holiday and go see if they can crank it up.
Have you done Jay Leno's show yet?
Yeah.
You have?
We have.
Okay. ZZ Top, the longest-running major rock band, still composed of its original members. And I think B.B. King told you once a long time ago that just play what you want to hear and everything will be fine. Is that one of the reasons that the band has stayed together for so long?
Oh, certainly. We embrace that adage from BB dearly. I guess there's one extra caveat to that whole thing. Someone said, gee whiz, you've stayed together longer than most marriages. What's the secret? Separate buses.
Right. There you go.
Yep.
His name is Billy F. Gibbons. Everyone go out and get this new album with a big...
Well, I've never drank a beer. I've never touched a drug, and I've never poisoned my senses. And those little chumps are probably jealous of me because I shoot bigger deer than they do, for starters. But anyhow, I don't have to play games for anybody. Did you notice this? I don't have to play any games. I say it how it is. If you don't like it, that's tough. I'm not dumb enough to think that I have a right to an opinion, because nobody does have a right to an opinion until they have shouldered the responsibility of doing homework based on the subject they would like an opinion on.
Or whatever. I was never a huge record collector, per se. You know, certain bands that I kind of drifted towards and got really into, and then of course I got really into guitar playing, so that sort of took over. Because we were like totally into it. We'd practice for 6 hours a day. We would, you know, we were just completely obsessed. Yeah, you know, some of the other guys, there were a lot of guys that were really good, but I don't think they were as like hardcore obsessed about it as we were. Applied to Berkeley College, and we ended up getting in and going there straight out of high school. And that's where we met Mike. So we were like 18 years old.
What did you want to do at that school? What were your goals when you were?
I wanted to be a professional musician. I wanted to be a performer, and you know, I went there because I heard that Steve Vai went there, and you know, certain guys that I looked up to, and that's the career path I wanted to take. You know, I wanted to be a professional musician, performer.
But were you also?
I hear young guys that didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, you know, we went into the studio, we were really young. It was our first album, we had like no time to do it, no experience. I didn't even have, like the amp I used wasn't even mine, the guitars I borrowed, you know.
Yeah.
We had fun.
And the songwriting for you?
Yeah, it just seems like it's just that of youth, you know. Not as developed, I think, as it is now. I mean, I think there's some good moments in the songs, and I think that we certainly established the style that would take us through, you know, the rest of our career. You know, that sort of progressive metal sound was absolutely established on the first record, but you could definitely hear the immaturity, you know, as musicians, as players, as writers. And
some of my influences were maybe Frank Marino then, and that's when I got into Hendrix and some other people. But really what turned me around on guitar and music were two different things. I saw Alan Holdsworth play live in concert in 1978, and I was about 14. And I didn't know who he was. I just showed up at the concert. It was with the band UK. I didn't even know who they were. I just went to the concert because it was some bargain concert, I think. And it just really changed my whole life about guitar, and really made me see guitar in a whole other way. And you know, I thought I wanted to go in a direction like that after I'd seen him. And also the keyboard player that I ran into a couple years later that played in Black Oak, Arkansas, a band with me about 12, 13 years ago. He was a classical pianist, and he had learned from the time he was a kid to play a lot of classical pieces, a lot of Liszt and Brahms and Rachmaninoff. And up until then, classical music, I just didn't think much about it. It had always been, when I was a kid, it was just something that was pretty or something that was just kind of in a museum somewhere or something. But when I saw this guy really play this stuff live, it really had a big effect on me. And so I really saw the vibrancy and the aliveness of it, and how it could still relate to any time. It's a timeless kind of music. So that really had a big effect. And so when I had Ibanez build me this guitar, I had him model the neck after that guitar, because Ibanez was actually the original manufacturer of the Roland guitars too. It was another Roland name, but Ibanez made it. And I always liked curly maple, and because I played that guitar so much, I'm really attracted to arch top guitars. I'm not real comfortable with a flat top on a guitar, so arch top is where it's at for me. Well, guitar picks, I use these Jim Dunlop Jazz 3 picks. I like kind of a small pick that I can fit in kind of the first joint of my finger. And I like the point. I can't use Jazz 2 or Jazz 1. I have to have like the point that's on the Jazz 3. They changed the formula a little bit on these, and I kind of like the older ones better, but I use the new ones right now. And also, I use these Holmes amplifiers I've had for almost 20 years. It was the first amplifier I ever bought, and I'm still using it. I bought it 20 years ago. And then I've got this tube-powered overdrive, the Westbury, that's been discontinued for a long time. I got it probably 8 or 9 years ago. And the Holmes aren't that great in and of themselves, and the Westbury isn't that great in and of itself, but the two together really make something that's it's a real smooth sound. It's hard to find in a lot of the newer amps today. I find a lot of them sound kind of cold.
What's my personal opinion? What's the consensus of how these people think? Well, I would say, in a nutshell, it's just a personal opinion, that they harbor no sense of doubt. They release all sense of burden, struggle, and fear. They choose to live in trust. They trust themselves. They go forward. They practice and practice and practice, and then they change their approach if it's not working. They believe that tomorrow morning is your audition day. You have to do it before tomorrow, and they go at it like nobody's ever gone at it. By the time they put their head on the pillow, they ask themselves, could anybody else have practiced more today, this day, than me? If not, they can sleep and rest. They push. They push. P-U-S-H. They persist until something happens. They continue going forward. They take an action, they take the bull by the horns, and they kick it in the ass. They keep going. Change their approach, give it cooking time, harbor no sense of doubt, take an action towards it, and implement. That's really a repetitive thing. They believe in themselves, belief, harbor no sense of doubt, release all sense of burden, struggle, and fear, and saying, I can't. C-A-N-T, you can't be saying that. Not if you want to be a high-level musician. So, get up, do it, take an action. If you believe it's right, go ahead and do it. Ask yourself, is this right? If it is, do it. Everybody else will be better off for it, because you'll be more in tuned and more equally yoked with the people that you need to know and be around if you're going to be a professional, no matter what the game is. Well, again, thanks for visiting us here at the Guitar Temple. Don't forget to visit my sister site, which is SteelHorseRV. If you're into travel and going throughout the United States and stuff like that in an RV tour bus, that's for you. All right, thanks again for coming. Talk to you again soon.